I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move right into the honors and recognition proportion. Mr. Miller.
All right, so Students of the Month, we will kick it off with Greenwood. Mr. Shank.
All righty, good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Greenwood's November Student of the Month, Jesse Donnelly. And Jesse is the son of Casey and Samuel, and he has two brothers, Isaiah and Benny. And he is currently in Mr. Angeloni's kindergarten classroom. Jesse is very active and loves to play outside. Some of his favorite things to do are swim, play baseball, and play in the snow. And his favorite color is dark blue, and his favorite food is pizza. When he's at school, Jesse loves to go down the slide on our playground and climb on the rock wall. When he grows up, he wants to be a
baseball coach.
all right. And he also feels like he is special because he loves God.
All right.
This is what Mr. Angeloni has to say about Jesse. Jesse is a great example of everything a Green Bulldog should be. Each day he comes to school ready to be safe, kind, and responsible. So if you can please put your hands together for Jesse, our Student of the Month.
All right, congratulations. Next up, we have Green Primary School.
All right, good evening, everyone. Please welcome our Student of the Month for Green Primary for the month of November, Addison Monet. Addison was first chosen by her classmates to be the star student for GPS, and then out of that list of 12 third grade students, our teachers actually selected Addison to represent the whole building. It's an amazing accomplishment, a huge honor, and we're very proud of her. Addison loves to dance, and she has been doing competitive dance at Bourne Academy for the past 2 years. Her goal is to master a back handspring. When she grows up, she would like to be an animal biologist, and her favorite animal is a dolphin. She has 2 dogs at home, and she has other talents such as playing the piano, and she has been taking lessons. She loves school because she loves her teachers. She's currently in Mrs. Sager's class, her friends, and especially math, which she shared with me that she is very good at. Her favorite motto and something she tries to live by is to not be afraid to try new things. Mrs. Sager had this to say about Addison. She said that she is a very sweet student who is very kind. She's bright, thoughtful, hardworking, and just an overall excellent student and lovely young lady. Addison was initially chosen by her peers, and this is what they had to say about her. She's super smart, fair, and kind, and she's a good listener and a good friend. When I talked with Addison today, I could definitely tell right away that she's a very sweet, one-of-a-kind girl, and I'm proud to announce her as Green Primary Student of the Month. Congratulations, Addison.
All right, Green Intermediate, Mr. Booth.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me tonight to introduce to you Bella Sears, who is our Student of the Month for GIS. She's a 6th grader. She is here tonight with Sarah and Dan, her mom and dad, and her younger brother, Matthew, who's a 2nd grader at GPS. So I talked to Bella about her favorite things about school, and she rates the ROCKS program as one of her favorite things. She's learning about team building and standing up for herself, and she really appreciates the leaders in that program. She's also very talented when it comes to singing. She's a part of our Nemo Ensemble Choir, which is coming up with our show coming up in the spring. She loves math, and she loves her teacher, Mrs. Prinke. She does very well in school academically, and she works very hard at it. So outside of school, she's a singer. She likes writing songs and singing. She likes art. She likes painting. Interesting, she loves to collect lotions, and she says, look up the word Tree Hut when it comes to lotions. It's her favorite. Activities outside of school is soccer, which she's been playing since she's been 4 or 5 years old. And currently she plays on the U Orange 13 travel team. She's also a tennis player and has gone to numerous camps. She also enjoys going on retreats at her church and playing with her dog, Maisie. The last thing she said she loves to do is to play with her neighbors at home. So her future plans, she sees herself as a teacher following the footsteps of her parents and would like to teach math in grades 1 to 3. Or, this is a big dream, I love this one. She says she wants to have her own cable show, be an interior designer with her favorite friends, Caitlin and Aubrey, together, all 3 of them with their interior design cable show. So that's her goal in life. Something special about you, her dad is very special to her. He's the coach of their travel soccer team. She says that she is very special because she's patient with her brother and is able to calm him down at times, which is good. She says that she's becoming a strong tennis player over the past couple years. This is her recipe for success, she says, to students who are coming into Green Intermediate. She says, write down the important things and plan ahead so you have the time to study and be prepared. Her hero is Alex Morgan, and she is the number 13 on the U.S. women's soccer team. She appreciates her because she loves soccer and loves helping her siblings get better at soccer. Her teacher writes, I'm so proud of Bella. She is a tremendous help in the classroom and always shows responsibility in her class preparation as well as her work. I appreciate that I can trust Bella to complete work, pay attention, and be an overall great role model for others. So please help me in congratulating Bella Sears, our Student of the Month at GIS. Congratulations,
Well done. Next up, the individual at the middle school has a conflict, so we're going to see them again, not until January though, so we're going to go on to the high school.
It's my pleasure to introduce our 2 seniors of the month. To my right here is Edgar San Jose, and he is the son of Chrissy and Edgar. He spends most of his time running, studying, playing piano, and playing chess. He is our captain of our Green High School cross country and academic challenge teams. Alongside of this, he runs outdoor track, manages our indoor track team, and is an attorney for our GHS mock trial team. He's also a student municipal representative for the City of Green with the Planning and Zoning Commission and a member of NHS, the Chess Club, and Key Club. He's currently applying to University of Chicago for a degree in economics, and he wants to thank his mom and dad for always supporting him and pushing him to be his best self. So congratulations, Edgar. Parker is the daughter of Julie and Aaron Green and an active member of her community. She is not only the president of the senior class, but she's president of student council and of National Honor Society. So watch out, Mr. Campbell. She might be coming for your job. And as a member of Girls, she's also a member of Girls of Green. She's the vice president of the Environmental Club, treasurer of Key Club, and she's also a member of French Club and All In. Last Tuesday night, Parker was honored for her work in diversity, equity, and inclusion by the Northeast Ohio Diversity Board. She was honored as a student champion at their Humanitarian Awards in Cleveland on last Tuesday night. She also plays for our varsity soccer and track teams, and outside of school, she's a member of the Mayor's Junior Council. And when she is not participating in various extracurriculars, she can usually be found reading. She said she'd like to thank her parents and friends and the Ritter Public Library for keeping her sane, as well as supplied in many books. So congratulations, Parker.
All right, one more round of applause for all of our students of the month. This time I see Mr. Shockley. I know he's here. Jennifer Connor and Matt Archer. I know with the holidays, some individuals may not be here, but Jake, since I see you, if you could come forward, please. Make sure you get your speech ready and ready to roll. So we do Spotlight on Staff, which whether it be parents, residents, colleagues, administration, they'll write in individuals that they feel contribute greatly to the district. We have so many great ones, and each board meeting we recognize 2 or 3. So this evening I'm going to tell about 3. I'll start with Jake since he is here, and I've personally worked with Jake in different capacities, and he is a consummate professional. He teaches physical education. He's done it at different grade levels, but a little bit about him from the high school. He volunteers his free time throughout the day to assist in various capacities. He's always looking to help in difficult situations. He's reliable, he's dependable, he's somebody that can be counted on each and every day. He never asks for anything in return and has a positive attitude about each and every single thing he does. The high school would like to thank you for all that you do to make Green High School the great place that it is. And obviously, the district thanks you, Jake, for everything you do for our physical education, the coaching, and all the other hats you wear. We're really grateful to have you here, and thanks for all you do. And Matt wasn't able to be here, but real quickly, Matt is an extremely hardworking employee that started in Green Local in 2011 as a bus driver. In 2017, he moved into the bus mechanic role, and he takes an awful lot of pride in his work, helping people on a daily basis. He goes above and beyond, helps out whenever it is needed. He's on the leadership team for strategic planning for the department. Approachable, calm demeanor, and Mrs. Shanna Cable says that she's extremely grateful to have him on her team. So congratulations, Matt. I'm sure you're watching out there. All right. And I think bus driver is one of the most challenging jobs in the district, and the next one might be the next most challenging. The head cook at Greenwood Elementary, Jennifer, has worked for the district for 22 years, and she's excellent no matter it be a preschool student or a high school student. She's kind, she's funny, she's organized, and she was at Green High School for quite some time and then took the leadership role being the head cook at Greenwood, and that's a huge task. She's filled in for many times, but now as the lead, she's doing an amazing job and exceeding any expectations that anybody have. She's an amazing asset to our district, and we can't thank her for the job she's doing, and just congratulations to everybody. So congratulations, students and staff. Appreciate what you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you all. Those who don't want to stay, you can certainly, we'll give you a few minutes to collect your things and head out. If you'd like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're certainly more than welcome to. But most people opt out.
Where you going? Everybody's leaving.
Yeah, it's boring. We're boring.
Where's everybody going?
Whoever's sitting there left their purse. Yeah. Whoever's sitting.
Oh, he has to download it.
Hey, Rebecca.
But he's not going to be here.
Rebecca. Whoever was sitting right there left it. Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
shoot.
Good spot, Katie.
Good
spot,
eye.
yes. Eagle Eye Stoynoff over there.
Yeah.
Wow.
She would have been.
Plenty of room up front.
There you go.
As we move through, continuing on with the approval of the agenda, we don't have any addendum items, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chinaki.
Second.
And thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snowberger.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. There's no need for executive session at this time. Anyone who'd like to speak publicly about the agenda, we'll kind of continue to roll through there on that. And move down to item number 7, the Superintendent Treasurer Report. The highly anticipated 5-year forecast from Mrs. Snowberger.
Okay. We're having a little technical difficulties, so I'm going to have to do it from here. Just as a reminder, the 5-year forecasts are due to the state by November 30th and May 31st each year. And a forecast is broken down into 3 sections: revenue, expenses, and final balances with and without levies. So as you can see on this slide, the left bar graph shows a beginning balance. This was as of July 1st of this year, with a little over $11,300,000. And it's projected that we would end the fiscal year in June with a little over $10 million. To the right, you can see the projected revenue and expenses of the district for the current fiscal year that we're in. And you can see also that the expenses are outpacing the revenues by a little over $1.1 million. So we're going to start with the revenue. Like I said, it's into 3 sections. If you break down the revenue, in the blue graph, you can see that 60% of the revenue of the district comes from local property taxes, both residential and businesses. 33% comes from state aid, and the remaining 7% is other revenue such as homestead and rollback reimbursements from the state, school fees, and any interest earned for the district. There's been a lot of discussion over the last few months in the paper and in the community on the rising property values for 2023 with the reappraisal that just happened. So I thought I would take a sidestep and briefly go over how this is calculated. So you can see from this slide that your property tax, it takes the value of your home by 35%, and it multiplies it by the effective tax rate for the levies that we have. And that would be someone's initial tax bill. They do subtract the state paid reimbursements. For homeowners, that's 12.5%. And then there's an additional homestead exemption that happens for various individuals that qualify. It's mostly the senior citizen population. And that's how your current tax bill is calculated. But unfortunately, it isn't that simple, or I wouldn't be here probably. House Bill 920 was passed by the then Governor Voinovich to protect taxpayers from unvoted tax increases, but only to an extent. Before House Bill 920, if your property tax value increased by 20% one year, your property bill, went up the same 20%. With House Bill 920, as your property values increase, the effective millage of fixed rate levies decrease. So schools, in theory, were to receive the same amount of revenue each year. But again, it's not that simple because a school district is, through law, expected to maintain a minimum of 20 mills. And this is referred to as the 20 mill floor. So from these boxes, I just wanted to show there seems to be some confusion of what counts towards the floor and what didn't, and what has growth potential because of the property value increase and what doesn't. So if you look at the first box with the yellow where it says inside millage, this is local taxes that are not voted on by any taxpayer. They were divided up between schools, municipalities, and other government agencies in your community. For green, that meant that we received 4.6 of the 10 mills, which is mainly comprised of our permanent improvement fund. If you remember, our permanent improvement fund is not part of the 5-year forecast. It's a separate fund and is restricted to capital expenses only. The middle box is called our fixed rate levies. We only have one of these levies, and it's from 1976 and 1978. They were combined into one continuous levy, And this is where the effective millage piece comes in. So you can see the first two boxes, that those two are included in the millage floor. So once a district gets to the 20 mil floor, it no longer can be reduced according to House Bill 920. So the third red box is what we here normally call fixed sum levies. The state calls those emergency levies, which I know is very confusing because it makes you feel like there's this emergency. We've tried to lobby for them to change the name forever because it's really just a fixed sum levy. And an example is the levy that's up for renewal come this March is a fixed sum levy, and it's for 4.1 million. And there is no growth potential in a fixed sum levy. Any active renewable levy that we have besides the safety and security levy is a fixed sum levy. So the dollar amount is the dollar amount regardless of what happens to your property values at home, and that would not increase your property bill. Your property tax bills are increased only from the fixed rate levies and the inside millage levies, the first two boxes. This slide just it kind of demonstrates the same concept. I'm just trying to show you visually different ways. You can see from the left to the right as house values go up, the effective millage goes down, and it's supposed to mean that it's going to stay relatively flat. I will tell you that, once again, this isn't what happened to us. What we're here in green is what I've been calling the perfect storm of the 2023, because green, like I said, is at the 20 mil floor. So that would trigger an increase in property values. But that also has to reduce the effective millage, but only to take us to that 20 mil floor I spoke of. So what's supposed to happen is when your property values rise, your state aid is reduced. It's kind of like a teapot. One goes up, the other goes down, because they think that a district is capable of paying more on their own with their own taxpayers. But it's green, and so part of the problem is that green is 1/6 of school districts in Ohio where the funding formula has failed us in the past, and we have been on the guarantee for several years now through state aid. The guarantee is basically what it sounds like is we cannot be reduced any more dollars than what we had back a few years ago. So the deeper that the funding formula is not funded by the state, the higher we get into the guarantee. So if this was our district and we were fully funded, our state aid would drop off to the same amount that our property tax revenues would go up. But because we're on the guarantee, we still are receiving the same amount from the state, and we are seeing that growth that we had from the large property tax increases that happened. I will say that it took me a while to wrap my head around all this, and I suppose you're probably all wondering the same. But I've done this, been the treasurer of a school one way or another for 28 years, and this is the first time that I have seen an increase in value bring additional revenue of any significance to a school district. But in the end, I will say that this additional revenue really bought us in one extra year of having a positive balance in the forecast. The additional revenue is about the equivalent of one payroll in the school district that we receive. So this is just a slide that, maybe because I'm a nerd, I liked. And it shows you can see that reappraisals happen every 3 years. 14 was that bad recession where no one had any value increase. So you can see where 14 didn't really matter, but 17, 20, and then 23, you can see in this current calendar year we're in, when they did the reappraisals for the city of Greene, the property values went up by 31%. And that has actually been the average of the state, at least this part of the state. It's been between 30 and 35%. Some areas of Cuyahoga County are close to 40. So we're up there with the higher values that are up there for that year. So that was just kind of a sidestep. We don't really talk about those revenues too much and how it's calculated, but with all of the stuff going on, I thought that was kind of important to watch this year. If we move on to expenses, you can see in the green that 85% of our expenses are salaries and fringe benefits, which is the average across the state. Typically, the Department of Education, one of their indicators of concern is if it gets to 87 or higher. We've been as high as 86.5, so 85 is about where we usually end up. If you recall, over the summer, we had negotiations with 2 of our 3 unions that were settled. And like any other entity in the world right now, our medical insurance costs have continued to rise. There was a 7.8% increase in fiscal year 24, which is the fiscal year we're in. And we were also afforded 1 medical premium holiday. Before last year, the COG, which is our insurance administrator, they offered typically between 2 and 3 holidays a year. But unfortunately, with all the ramifications of COVID, we've had 1 the last few years, which is about a savings to the district of about $612,000 or so in a year. The forecast it does have projected out wage increases that are already built in for all 5 years, a 10% increase in projection of medical premiums, and 1 medical holiday for all future years. I've been part of the COG now in 2 different districts for 20 years, and there has never been a year where there was not a medical holiday, premium holiday. So I do feel confident in at least having that 1 holiday in there every year. So you see with the 85% gone, there isn't much wiggle room left. Of the 15% left, 10% goes to purchase services. Purchase services are 90% utilities, gas, electric, water, and the rest are typically professional development that goes on within the district. We do have quite a few grants on the federal level, so most of our professional development is handled through those grants from the state. The last 5% is for supplies, both in the classroom and out. This includes workbooks, gas for buses, cleaning supplies, repairs, anything that's a tangible object that lasts less than 5 years. So this last slide is kind of where we're getting to the end. Like I said, it was broke up into 3 sections: revenues, expenses, and then your final balances. You know, it's human nature to look at the bottom number and just say, okay, what do we got? And really, for treasurers and for school boards, our main focus is to look at the graph on the left, because as you can see, the total revenue, which is in blue, as it rises each year, it doesn't rise as quickly as our orange graph, which is expenses for the year. So I tried to think of it like this to explain to somebody once. If you were at home and you were paying all your bills, and your bills were more than the money you brought in from your paychecks, you would have to go transfer some of your savings account to cover the rest of your bills. And eventually that savings account would run out, and you would either have to cut your expenses or you would have to find more money to bring in, which is where we are right now. The graph shows you that on the right, it shows you the actual cash balances. So you can see in 2027, it's just barely above the break-even line. We will end up, if everything stays the same, which is very far away, even though it doesn't seem like it, in 2027, we have a little over $500,000 of a cash balance in 27. And then in 28, even with the renewal levies in place, it's projected a negative $5 million. The last 2 boxes are really just to illustrate the cumulative effect of the expenses over the revenues, and it shows you after 3 years the net loss, and after 5 years the net loss, and that's if the district basically did nothing at that point. I thought this was interesting because there has been a lot of discussion. I've heard a lot about inflation and how much things were costing, and how could we expect, not to help out, I guess. with those expenses and, with fees and things like that. So I found it interesting that the annual change in revenue, the historical value is 1.4% for the last 3 years, but the change in revenue for the future 4 years is 3.95%, which is all based on that increase in property value that I told you about earlier. But the other side of that is that the expenses are also projected to inflate higher than the past at 5.32%. And that's where you can see where the expenses in the district are outpacing the revenue that we bring in. This was just a slide, a demographic slide that I thought was interesting. This is how much per pupil out of the general fund we spend per student. You can see back in 2019 that we were spending $10,433. And this current year, we're spending $12,592, all due to inflation, people, raises, everything costs more than it did. And it's the same for school as it is for anybody at home. And then breaking that down just a little bit further, right now the district in our current fiscal year is spending $70 per day per student to educate a student here at Green. The slide on the right shows you just the residential properties. Just residential alone, 45% of that revenue comes from residential properties. The other 55% comes from state aid, from businesses that pay their property values, and any miscellaneous income like fees and pay to participate and things like that. And then the last slide is I was trying to find a different way to make it more relatable on where we were cash-wise, because, you start talking in millions and people kind of tune out because millions of dollars is hard for anybody to really fathom. So this shows you how much cash we have on hand, how many days we could operate. So you can see that by 2027, if the district does not either come up with some ways to reduce their expenses or come up with additional revenue, we could only be open in July for 9 days. So I was trying to find a different way for it to kind of grasp because if you say somebody, well, we have, $600,000, well, that sounds like a lot of money. But again, as I like to belabor, payroll is over $1 million every 2 weeks. So this is where we're at with this slide. The last thing I wanted to touch on pretty quickly is that there are two side notes that are not part of this forecast because we have always run the district on the things that we know right now. The first one is that the Ohio Supreme Court has heard all the briefs between the pipeline and the different county auditors on the values of the different pipelines. The pipeline feels that it was overstated. They have only been paying a portion of what they owe at this point. And a settlement has been put out there, and the Ohio Supreme Court has until it has to decide if they want to accept that these two are going to come together with a settlement. The Department of Taxation has estimated that our settlement would be a little over $700,000, but to not know that for sure and not know what year that's going to happen, it just didn't make a lot of sense for me to hope that it worked out, and I hope I put it in the right year. So we kind of left that off for now, knowing in the back of our head that it's there. The other unknown right now that we're keeping an eye on is Senate Bill 153. Senate Bill 153 was presented back in the beginning of September, and it stemmed from what we talked about with the real estate values and the growth potential that school districts had if they were at that 20 mil floor, and as it was introduced, instead of just taking the 1 year's reappraisal, it would take an average of the previous 3 years. So the hit, the increase, whatever you want to say, it wouldn't be as drastic as that 31% that I showed you a few slides ago. But what that's going to do over time is, one, that it will have a significant problem for our school districts, because that would mean a loss this January of $600,000 and a little over $1 million in the next fiscal year, because we were just reassessed. And also, it has a sunset law in it, so it would only be good for this triennial update. And what people, what they don't explain in the news and to people is that when that happens, when you get to 2026, those home values have to shoot up to be what they were in 2025 only, and no longer are they an average. And it would actually cost taxpayers more money in 27. So it would help your tax bill in 2024, but you're going to end up paying more in 27. And the district can't hold on that long. The district doesn't have enough funds to hold on for it to even itself out in 2027. So we would, at that point, be in a negative cash balance, and then we would have this huge gain in 2027. And it really would only kick the can down the road, so to speak, for taxpayers. It's been stuck in the Ways and Means Committee for a bit now. Even as last Friday, Mr. Miller heard a whole nother scenario that they're coming out with. And all of these scenarios would be effective January 1st for the February tax bills that come out. Unfortunately, we couldn't delay the forecast any longer because it's due next week to the state. So we decided just to move forward with what we know. These are the things we know as of right now, and we have until December 31st to file an alternative forecast if necessary, with whatever law they decide to come up with, or if they don't. So that's pretty much where we're at with Senate Bill 153. We look every day, and there's been no update for weeks. So that's really what we know about that right now. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions.
A couple. Just going back on some of the assumptions, we talked about the effective tax rate for a property owner in Green. Now, what that includes is more than just the school, right? It includes all of the county public services and all of that in our property tax, right? So what share of someone's property tax in Green is driven by the schools? Just, do you have, I think it was like 47% or something?
Well, each entity has its own effective millage, and it's
Right.
calculated separately depending on when that levy was passed.
Right.
So that's one of the things that people come back and they'll say, well, my bill is higher. How come my bill is higher? House Bill 920 doesn't work. Well, they forget about, the library or children's services or whatever passed in that last cycle. But to know the percentage of that, I don't know offhand.
I guess that's what my point was. There's many other things in that effective tax rate other than just the schools.
Absolutely.
For
Absolutely.
that.
Zoos, libraries, you name it.
Yeah.
DDs
Okay.
in there.
And I believe ours is less than 50% of our overall, of a Green taxpayer's tax bill.
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as far as the medical premiums and the assumptions that you make there, that's all given to you for guidance from the COG leadership, right? To include 1 and a 10% we've kind of heard that before.
Yeah, the COG leadership would say that they want us to put in 10% and no holidays. This past year, our increase was 7.8, which is the highest it's been since I've been here for 15 years.
Right.
So I kind of split the difference with them, and I put in 10. But then I also do put that one holiday in because, like I said, in the 20 years that I've been part of the COG, we've never not had at least one.
Right.
So,
and I know that we typically put 10% in because
Yeah.
that's kind of the guidance that they give us just in
Agreed,
case, and then we
agreed.
can
Yeah.
usually adjust that back by the end of, but
Yes.
in the May
At the end of
update.
May. If they tell us in time by the end of May, we fix that, yeah. But
Right.
I just feel,
No, I mean,
I put the one in because,
yeah. I mean, it's like you said, we kind of do what we know, and
Yeah.
I mean, after 20 years, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
kind of start to know that, right?
Right.
So really, when we're talking about any kind of growth for us, it's on a relatively small amount of inside and fixed rate millage.
Agreed.
So even though you're, what I think we were all hearing at one point in time is that my taxes, my valuations are up 35%, therefore my tax bill is going up 35%. You guys should get 35%, and and all that. And I think that's, I feel like you kind of showed that the reason why that's not true is that that's just not the way it works
Right.
in the world of taxation. The crazy world of taxation. And then for the pipeline settlement, that 700,000 is just the portion that they're appealing, right? Because it's still continuing to pay some on a diminishing
Correct.
on a diminishing scale. Is that right? I mean, I remember when the settlement was proposed.
They're paying, right now they're paying 65% of their tax bill.
Okay.
And then the settlement number is 85% of the other remaining 45%. Don't ask, I don't know. But that's how they came up with it. 85% of the 45% that they weren't paying, a one-time payment, because they've also found that the pipeline is not depreciating as fast as they thought it would, because they're making enough money off of it.
Right.
So that they're unhappy about that as well. So they wanted it to depreciate by $1 million a year, plus only owe us the 45%.
Right.
So the settlement is getting 85% of the 45 that's left, or whatever.
But the settlement's not just a one-time, we're going to pay you this and not pay you anything anymore. That's just the portion that they appealed.
Correct.
And
And
then-
it's only from that time
then-
frame where it started till
Yeah.
they make the decision.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I think it's kind of eye-opening. I do like the number of days that you have in there for dollar purposes. And like we've all seen, when was it? This 2 Mays ago that the state came out and said, oh, by the way, we're cutting this year's budget, which was already 11 months in,
Right.
by $600,000, and then oh, by the way, next month we're taking another $800,000 out.
Right.
So it's in all honesty, it's amazing how you can come up with this, and how you've been able to be so accurate. But every 2 years they kind of change it anyways, and so we're there's so many different rabbit holes you can go down. But I appreciate this part of being this is what we know, and this is where we at. So I wish. Seems like every time that the legislation on any level tries to fix things, it really turns up into a different, bigger ball of mess at the end. So, yeah. Anybody else? And yeah.
So thank you, Mrs. Snowberger, because you always make it so easy, I think, for all of us to understand what's going on, because this is an ever-moving target. And I think just to kind of echo and emphasize a couple of things that Mr. Campbell said, I think it is pretty amazing some of the things that you have been able to absorb, or the administration and the faculty and staff of the district, because we have, seen some cuts at the last minute and just craziness. And, we're still moving forward, however many years now, because I mention this every time, past when we thought we were going to need new money, we're still, trucking along. So I think that's important. One thing I just did want to kind of emphasize, because I've seen it playing out a little bit on social media, is kind of this, misnomer that somehow we are going to get all of this money based on these tax valuations. So could you just talk for a moment, because I've heard people say, oh, well, they don't really need that renewal levy in March because they're going to get money from this revaluation of property. So could you talk just a moment about what those numbers would look like if that renewal was not passed in March?
Yes. Put my glasses back on because I can't see. So without the renewal, we would actually be, if all of these things stayed the same, we would actually be $1.2 million in the negative in 2026. And that's everything staying the same. That's where we would be. So, you know, it's been hard because I understood that, and we were very worried about, you know, these new property values and, you know, how would people feel about a renewal of the 4.1 million that we have up to go up in March. You know, so if the renewal does not pass, then we would, we significantly would need some additional dollars next school year and likely a new revenue source by 2026. But then it also just compounds over each other. So without the renewal, but with the new property value and the increase in revenue, by 2028, we would be $20 million in the negative. So you go from 1.2 million in 26 to 20 million in the negative, not changing anything else without that renewal levy passing.
Yeah.
So,
And so I think the big message is that is just a false narrative that's out there.
It is.
That we are not going to get, and you know, who knows what happens with this House bill? It could even get worse. But you know, all things stay the same. We're not going to get something from these increases in property values that is going to make that unnecessary in any way. So it is really crucial that people understand that is still an absolute
100%.
you know, necessity there. It's also, I've also heard, oh, there's so much new construction, that'll make up for it. That doesn't make up for it. That's not how it works. So it's really important that those myths don't, you know, grow significantly, because it would be disastrous for the district if that gets out of hand and that renewal is not passed. And Mr. Campbell's absolutely right. Every time the legislature tries to touch something to quote unquote make it better, they find a way to make it 1,000 times worse. It's almost amazing to me. And I think, in all honesty, there's no coincidence that those House reps are up for re-election next year. So this is going to look, you know, great to campaign on for the moment. And like you said, it's a kick the can. You're paying now or you're paying later, essentially. And so I hope people do not get enamored with that because it looks good in that initial billing, and then the bills come due a little bit later and they realize that it's not. And at the same time, it's not helpful. Then it's been so detrimental to school districts in the long run. So it's something I encourage everyone to keep an eye on, because I think it's very important to understand what they're trying to do. It's really not going to be helpful in the long run. Yeah. So I think that was it. Again, thank you for all your hard work on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just have one question, or I just thought maybe you could talk a little bit more about the permanent improvement fund and capital expenses and the difference between operating expenses, because I think a lot of people don't understand the difference.
Sure. About 17 years ago or so, the district moved that inside millage that I spoke of. They moved it to a permanent improvement levy, which, you know, in hindsight was brilliant, because it's really hard to have any money left over for capital expenses when you only have 5% of your budget left after utilities and people. So you can't really do a lot of things, you know, because it just gets eaten up, you know, by day-to-day stuff.
And what are capital expenses?
Capital expenses are anything that would has a life of 5 years or more. So it could be site improvements, such as a new roof, parking lot. It could be textbooks, computers, depending on the computer. Most all computers are classified that way. Textbooks are still classified that way. They are restricted to those things only that have a life of 5 years or more, and they are kept separate as a restricted fund from the general fund. So everything we talked about here today was just general fund operating day to day. But, you know, when I tell people that we have a continuous permanent improvement fund, you know, they're jealous of that, because it's really hard to get anything done. It's hard to save for $1 million roof when you only have 5% of your budget left over to spend. So.
Right. Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And just one more quick thing. It's important to understand that the money in the general fund can't, you can't commingle those
cannot.
together, because I think that's also a big misconception out there, that those capital dollars have to be spent on capital. You can't bring that into the general fund. So when we get to 2028 and you're seeing those numbers, if there were money in that permanent improvement, we couldn't just say, oh, well, we need to make payroll, so we're just going to take this and move it over here. That is going to get you in big trouble. Yes, it is illegal. Others have tried and have failed, and that is very, very illegal to do. But
Others not in this district.
no, not in this district. I'm sorry, I should have made that clear. Not here, but out in the never have tried and failed, and it's not a good thing. But it's very complicated, and it's easy to see how people could be confused by things like that. So
Easily,
I think information is important.
Mr. Chinaki, do you have anything?
No, I mean, you had mentioned, Mrs. Snowberger, about the, a couple folks have talked about the pipeline. There's no assessment in there right now, because it could be something that's 2 years from now or 5 years from now. And you said the Supreme Court, there's an open window for that. It's not like they're saying it has to be decided by 2030 or something like that.
No, they told me, they're like, well, put in your forecast in 2025. That's reasonable. And I was like, according to whom?
Right.
And like, can you promise me by 2025? And they said no. And I said, well, then I'm not putting it in, because, that makes a difference. I mean, that's, that doubles that number in 27 if it happens by then. But,
Right.
We don't know that to be a fact. So, yeah.
And maybe it's just the last thing, all the building dollars and everything are totally separate,
Different
not
fund.
looked upon, right,
Yes.
and out of there.
Yes.
For that. And
And
maybe
not in
just,
permanent improvement. It has its own fund
Right.
all by itself. Yeah.
right, because exactly. And then, and maybe the last thing, just to kind of like tag along with the operational and permanent improvement stuff, is that the levies were really designed this way, right? To have that diminishing to where you ask a little bit more, and then as the, you have a little bit of excess in the first 2 or 3 years, and then you're kind of in negative spending in the second, 2 or 3 years, so that at the end of that, theoretically, that 5-year piece is supposed to, dwindle down to where, you go back and ask for more money.
Right.
And so that's, it's always been amazing how they set that up. And I would like to, the anti-thing of genius would be, well, we could all think of several words that might describe that. But I think that's the part where some people will get a little confused as well, is that, you have all this excess money. Why can't you run it like a business and say you have all these expenses that are occurring? Because in businesses, typically you can change how much you charge for things or change your product line. Well, we're still educating kids.
Right.
I mean, that's our business, it's always going to be our business, and it's, kind of run in that.
And interesting enough,
setup.
like Governor Voinovich, I mean, he had the right idea back then, but he was the Cuyahoga County auditor, and he was running for governor. And so he was using that as a platform
No way.
to win and so protecting taxpayers. But they never dreamed that this would happen the other way, where now you get to this 20 mil floor.
Right.
And if the current county auditors had their way, they wanted to reduce the floor and take the floor away and have everyone be at a different floor. So all 612 districts or whatever would all have a different floor. And thankfully, that went by the wayside about, a month ago, Mr. Miller, or so? Because that one I was really sweating. So, so that one's gone,
sleep.
though. So, yeah, so.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? No. Okay. Thank you. Moving forward for the approval of the minutes, do I have the motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for October 23rd, 2023?
So moved. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Second.
Mrs. Stoynoff? Snowberger?
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Abstained?
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mrs. Benelli.
Yes.
Motion carries 401.
Thank you. For the financial report, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the financial statement and payment of bills from October of 2023. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
And Mr. Chinaki. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item B, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the payment to Engel Incorporated for gas services April 23 in the amount of $6,203.23. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. And second?
Second.
Mr. Cohen, thank you. Questions or comments about that?
So this was when we switched over to Ohio Schools Council. You know, on your gas bill where you have the delivery charge and then you have the gas charge. These were the folks that were doing the delivery of the gas services, and they called us a couple weeks ago and said that they found in their system that the folks that had moved over to Ohio School Council, they never sent out the final bill. So I did verify that this was reality, but they just never billed us for this back in April. So
They do tend to get a little upset about that.
yeah. I told them.
So we can't use the you snooze, you lose.
Right. I thought about some things to say, but I decided to be nice. So
Oh, good. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item C, the superintendent treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the following resolution. A resolution determining to proceed with the submission to the electors of the Green Local School District the question of the renewal of an existing tax levy pursuant to sections 507 or 5705.194 to 5705.917 of the revised code. Basically, it's for the renewal levy that you talked about for the 4.2 million, I believe. Is that correct?
4.1.
4.1. I looked at the 4.2 mils. So, okay, all right. So the 4.1 million dollar tax renewal, and that will be on the March
19th.
19th. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoyanov
Second.
and Mr. Cohen. And this is the second reading and final one, right?
This is the
one
final
that
reading,
puts it on.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Stoyanov,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item D, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education accept a donation from Michael Buser in the amount of $500 in support of the Green Intermediate School Grief Group. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli.
Second.
And a second, Mr. Chinaki. Thank you. Questions or comments? Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item E, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the agreements with Belfair JCB Monarch School to provide special education and related services to a student for the remainder of the 23-24 school year due to the nature and severity of the student's disability in the amount of $77,723.31, effective November 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mrs. Stoyanov. Any further questions or comments? Mrs. Snowberger.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item F, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the 5-year forecast and notes as presented by the treasurer. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli
Second.
and Mrs. Stoyanov. Any other further questions or comments? Mrs. Snowberger, anything to add to the? No. Okay.
I'm all done.
Just giving you another chance. I know you like it.
No, I'm all done.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item G, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the board approve the following resolution. A resolution authorizing the execution of a First Amendment to the cooperative agreement for community learning centers between this board and the city of Green. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chinaki.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Would you like to make some comments and clarification there, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I mean, this is an example. I know the mayor and city council has talked about the collaboration with the school district as part of the facility projects. This agreement extends the original agreement beyond 2032 to 2059, making our buildings community centers. So in addition to the students and staff utilizing the buildings, there's access for the community, and that will generate $1 million annually from 2033 through 2059. And again, that's on the PI side to go towards the building. So obviously, really appreciate the city and the collaboration.
And this is a result of the city voting to extend that $1 million payment, which was, again, supposed to expire in 32, moving to 59, and like continuing that, and then now all the buildings take on the designation of community learning centers, which allows a little bit more collaboration between the usage, right, of the city and the schools and stuff from that.
This is what happens when we work together, the city and the schools and that, and which is awesome. I mean, it's awesome for both of us, but really awesome for us.
Well, I mean, also for them too. I mean, they
Yeah,
get
it is awesome for them, too.
you know, our facilities that you know, we use during the day. They use in the evening a lot of times during during the winter seasons and stuff like that. So. You know, if the facilities exist, they need to be used. And, you know,
Yeah, and
so we're all paying for the same stuff, right? So
Yep.
why not? I agree with you, Mrs. Finelli.
And there's a
absolutely.
lot of people out there that's very appreciative of the city
Yeah.
and the school working together.
Yeah, me being one of them, and you too, probably.
Me too.
I think. Any other questions or comments, Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item H, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the agreement with Applewood Centers Incorporated Reserve School to provide special education-related services to a student during the 23-24 school year due to the nature and severity of the student's disability in the amount of $298.91 per day, effective November 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli.
Second.
And
That was
Mr. Cohen?
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Stoyanov.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mrs. Stoyanov. And I'm going to rescind that thank you to you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Under new business, the consent calendar note. As always, items under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted under one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the board votes unless a board member requests an item be clarified or even removed from the consent calendar for separate action. I don't believe we have any amendments to that. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as depicted?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Second.
And a second, Mrs. Finelli. Questions or comments?
Just real quickly, just want to bring the attention to 1A, Mr. Hanson. Randy's been with the district. At the conclusion of this school year, it'll make 34 years. He's had a profound impact on so many different individuals, and he's definitely going to be missed. I know that whether he was coaching or teaching, a lot of kids smiles were brought to their face by his work. So he's just a great guy, and I wish him well the rest of this school year and, on his next chapter of life.
All right, thank you.
And can I just say that I think he is the last teacher that was here when I went, which obviously means that he started when he was about 14 teaching. So that is, he's really had great life accomplishments. But yeah, I think that's it. So congratulations to him. And now I officially feel old.
You finally worn them out.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Snowberg.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Item B, the superintendent treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the affiliation agreement with Children's Hospital Medical Center of Akron to host clinical experiences for graduate students. The agreement should be effective through June 30 of 2028. I assume that starts immediately, so it would be effective tonight. Yeah, okay. Usually it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's usually a start date, there's an end date, but that's assumed probably. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chinaki,
Second.
and thank you, Mrs. Spinelli. Questions or comments?
Just that just that obviously we appreciate the partnership with all of the partners, and certainly Children's Hospital Medical Center of Akron's a great thing for our community and also for those graduate students to learn on the job.
It's just a quick question. Is this similar to student teaching where there's no funds exchanging hands here, right?
Correct.
Okay, just needed to check because that's my husband's employer.
Anything else? Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Item C, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the 3-year agreement with Educational Funding Group, EFG, for the district E-rate consulting services at a cost of $2,000 a year or 10% of total USAC approved and dispersed funds, whichever is greater. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Cohen. Questions or comments?
This is just the program that school districts can save upwards of 50% on certain things, telephones, internet, and whatever's behind the scene that makes internet work, much more technical. But that I'll leave to our tech director to figure out.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mrs. Snowberger.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Any recognition of visitors? Anybody public participation? No? Okay. All right. Just thought I'd throw it out there in case anybody wants to jump in there. Board commendations. Mr. Chinaki, why don't we start down your end of the table?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I'll be try to be short and sweet this evening. Want to obviously give a hats off to our football team whose season just ended this past Friday. Heck of a run by the Coach Geis-led team. Very, very proud of them and their efforts to really string together a magical season. I don't know what the expectations were at the beginning of the season, but I think they made the community very proud. They made this board very proud. They made the administrators very proud of everything that they were doing. And time again, you were hearing different stories come out about just some of the above and beyond leadership that you really started to see emerge with the team. Some of the younger players, even some of the, just tidbits you would talk with people and just, I think that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So hats off to them being the regional final runner-up. So very, very proud of their efforts. Earlier this afternoon, the Blessings in a Backpack program was able to provide full Thanksgiving meals to 96 families. So lots of volunteers, lots of community partners, lots of help with those efforts, but just always extremely proud to have that organization, here in Greene and tied into folks who, really want to make a difference, because while we may think that, things are great and everything is, there are families that need that. So it's vital that we offer help and services like that, especially, for families that may be struggling this time of year. To feed almost 100 families with full meals is pretty awesome. So, and then just to dovetail into that, I hope that everyone has a great Thanksgiving. To my colleagues and administrators, and just enjoy these next few days off, catch the breath, and get ready to head into the, December time frame and wrap out the, the calendar year. So that's all that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chinaki. Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I just wanted to focus on a fantastic event that took place last week, and that was, of course, the Greene High School musical Anastasia. I want to thank all of the parents, the teachers, the students behind the scenes, the kids in the orchestra pit, the kids working that were taking the stagecraft class and working behind the scenes. A few years ago, Scott Bantam left, and, he was kind of a living legend in terms of theater directors. And I think there was a lot of worry about, what's going to happen, what's going to follow. And after watching the last 2 years and 2 musicals, it was Little Mermaid last year and Anastasia, it's just really heartening, especially, my family's very involved in kind of that musical theater world. My kids have always taken part in those musicals and those plays, and it's just really great to see the things that are happening in this district. And I just want to really take my hat off to Katrina Honkala, the director of the show, and she's been the director for the last few years, and who has really done a fabulous job, taking over and filling some really big shoes. And also I really want to thank Scott Plummer, the technical director of the show, who, gets to, is in charge of the set and the lighting and the sound. And as I told him this weekend, I've been attending these shows, I think, since 2005. And I've never seen a better show technically than the last one. You go to a show, there'll be stuff like, static with the mics and, all those kind of things. This show was, and I saw, all the performances, nearly flawless in terms of the technical aspect of the show. So it was just a fantastic production. I'm really looking forward to, what they have in store for next year. And every time you walk into that auditorium and you see the posters of the musicals that they've done in the past, it just shows kind of the history of musical theater in this district, and it's really something I think that we can be proud of. Kind of on a related note, very sad note, I know we all saw last week what happened with the tragedy with the Tusky Valley band and the horrible accident that happened on the interstate that resulted in 3 of the band kids being killed and 3 others, parents and mentors, affiliated with the district. And it just really puts everything into perspective, especially as we go into Thanksgiving, and to really remind us that we should be thankful for what we have, because, you just don't know when, something terrible like that could happen. So I know I was thinking about them all last week. And, I know that, a couple of their kids were involved in musical theater, and it was just all, kind of related. So, my heart goes out to those people.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
Ms. Spinelli?
Well, I just want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving. And I don't know, I think the district is doing great, and we're pretty much perfect, so. I don't have anything else to
Enough
say.
said.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sally.
Well, I just don't know how to follow that. Yeah, nothing else to say. Thank you. So I just wanted to mention that now all of our buildings have been recognized by U.S. News and World Reports as a top school. So congratulations on that to everyone. And we also congratulations to the district for receiving the District PBIS Award, which is one of only 2 districts in the region that received that award. So a lot of good work there. I echo the congratulations to the football team on their great run. And I was not able to see Anastasia this weekend because I had family in town, but I've heard amazing things. So congratulations to all that were involved there. And happy Thanksgiving. And here we go into the crazy holiday season. So take time to breathe deeply and try to relax. It's always stressful, but fun.
As she says with a forced smile.
Yes, I'm working on it.
We've been watching the football games on TV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great that
I mean,
we can do
Yeah.
that.
it's amazing what's come up with that, and I think a lot of that started with the basketball group, I think.
Yeah.
And then it's morphed
It's
into that.
really
Soccer
nice.
does that and everything. And I think it's a great service. And
It
you know,
is.
obviously, it takes technical gear, and it's another collaborative effort I think that we've done with the city.
And I
in that.
suppose we may as well plug the Green Auto Mile for sponsoring that.
There
Yes.
you go. There you go. As we go
I
through
had to
there.
sit out in the rain. It's really nice.
Just to finish up, you know, Mr. Chinaki touched on it with blessings in a backpack. There are three major players that I would really like to, give a lot of recognition and thanks to the people at Bueller's for donating a lot of the groceries. Those Garner Pie, if you're familiar with that, out there over by Main Street, they donate all the pumpkin pies, and really it takes a phone call and they're just like, yeah, just tell us how many you need. And then the Dairy Farmers of America donated this year 150 gallons of milk so most of the families have at least, the larger families have two gallons of milk or one coming from there. And it's amazing that the amazing job that Jennifer Doer does with that. I know Julie McMahon is highly involved with that, along with our family support service people. Blessings our program is nationally recognized as one of the model programs for if people want to do this. And when you see when you get a glimpse of the amount of work that's into that, it's just amazing. But the heart that goes into it, and the ultimate goal is just to feed these kids. And it's just like, I mean, is there anything more important than that? I don't think so. No. And it's awesome that we have that here in Greene. And it's like I say all the time, this community is amazing, and I'll continue to say it that Sally, I think, is right. Greene is perfect, almost. But we all have our flaws and everything. But one of the things that the Greene community doesn't do is that they don't let each other down. They stand behind each other. They help each other out. They pick up their neighbor. They're willing to help, and a lot of times you don't really need to ask. They just need to know that there's a need, and right. I think this community is obviously holds a very special place in my heart, and it's just wonderful. So one last thing, Dave, what was the cast size? Do you know of this?
36. Yeah. I want to say 36, but that doesn't, of course, count the behind the scenes students as well.
And that's the other part of that. That everybody wants. Sometimes they think that the arts are and specials, I think is what we call them, right? That they're just, it's fluff, and it's just what do we need to do with that? But I think when you look at that, when you look at the cast size, 30 people performing, 35. There's been up to, I think Wizard of Oz was one of the biggest ones that they had. It was over like 70, around 70, because they had a bunch of kids in there. But you look up the makeup of the cast. There's a reason why there were 2 shows on Saturday, is because couple of the football players had starring roles in this whole thing. So it's not like we're little groups of things that just move along in this school. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about, especially about the musical theater program, is that it is truly a melting pot of everyone in the school. And if you don't want to be out front, there's plenty of things to do in the back. And it's just, I don't know, it's another jewel, I think, in the crown of Greene schools in the community. So with that, I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I want to say I apologize for taking a little bit longer, but I don't apologize for it, because I think it's important to get that word out. Our next meeting is in December, and otherwise, everybody have a very healthy, I don't even think healthy is the right word for Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much.
Yeah.
But if you do, well, then get over it, and then, it's your own fault. But please be safe, and then we'll see everybody back on Tuesday. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Chinaki?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.